My folks thought it would be hilarious to leave me stranded in another state. Just drive off and see if I'd make it back. They laughed. They actually laughed. I never went back. 15 years later, they tracked me down. Too late. 107 missed calls too late. That summer I turned 22 was supposed to be just another stretch of low-pay monotony, working in my dad's rundown hardware store, crashing at home because college was a waste of money, according to the banks and, more importantly, my dad. And playing my usual role as the family punching bag while my golden boy brother, Tyler, basked in their approval. We weren't broke, not exactly, but definitely not the type of family that ever vacationed in Disneyland. So when Dad suddenly announced we were going on a road trip to my uncle's wedding in Montana, I should have known something was off. 3 days into that hellish ride, I was already kicking myself for not finding an excuse to skip it. Dad and Tyler had been playing their favorite game again, making my life miserable just for the fun of it. Mom, Susan, would occasionally mumble something like, "Enough, you two," in her barely their voice, but it never changed anything. Honestly, I need to explain my family. My dad, Frank, wasn't just your standard hard ass. He was the kind of man who'd shake you awake at 2 a.m. to yell about a trash can not being emptied, the kind who'd throw out your stuff if it was in his way, the kind who had been telling me I was worthless since before I could tie my shoes. Tyler figured it out early, either be Dad's clone or end up like me. You can guess which route he picked. That morning we stopped at some nowhere rest stop in Montana. Just flat nothing in every direction. Empty fields. A couple of tired vending machines. A bathroom that smelled like bleach and despair. I'd been sleeping crunched in the back of the Suburban and needed to stretch my legs. Maybe pee in a real toilet. Dad and Tyler were cracking up about something, and Mom was reapplying lipstick in the visor mirror. I remember exactly what I was wearing. An old Nirvana tee, ripped jeans, and battered Converse that had seen too many miles. I didn't grab my phone. It was charging in the car. Didn't take my wallet either. Why would I? I was just stepping out to pee. 10 minutes, tops. That's how long I was in there. When I came out, blinking into the bright morning sun, the Suburban was gone. At first, I thought it was a prank. Maybe they parked around the back or just out of sight. I checked every corner of that rest stop. Nothing. Just an empty parking lot and that familiar twist in my stomach. Here's the thing about getting betrayed by your own blood. It hits different. I sat on the curb for an hour, convincing myself they were just messing with me, trying to scare me, and they'd come back. People came and went. A trucker asked if I was okay. I lied. Said I was waiting for my girlfriend. She was in the bathroom. He nodded and moved on. After 2 hours, the cold started creeping in, not from the weather, but from the realization. They weren't coming back. My first instinct was to borrow someone's phone, call them, beg them to come get me. But as I was walking toward a woman with 2 kids, something stopped me. A whole highlight reel of every humiliation, every joke, at my expense, flashed through my mind. I could almost hear Tyler saying, "But he's crying right now. And Dad, let's see if he can figure it out if he's not as dumb as he looks." I made a different choice. I asked the woman if I could use her phone. I didn't call my family. I called directory assistance and got the number for a shelter in Billings. Then I asked if she could give me a ride into town. Told her my family had an emergency and had to leave, but someone would pick me up later. She hesitated but eventually nodded. That first night in the shelter was rough. I had nothing. No money. No ID. Just what I was wearing. The guy running the place, Ben, let me use their computer. I tried to look up my uncle's address from the wedding invite I vaguely remembered. I thought, maybe I'd still show up, confront them. But staring at the screen, something clicked. Why chase people who left you on the side of the road like a stray dog? So instead, I created a new email. Looked up how to replace a stolen ID. Googled cash-only jobs. Made a plan. 2 days later, I was scrubbing dishes in the back of a greasy little diner called Wanda's. The owner, Wanda, was in her 60s, hair dyed blue at the ends, covered in tattoos. I told her my wallet had been stolen and I needed work. She looked me over and said, "My dishwasher quit yesterday. You steal from me, I'll bury you behind the diner. Start now." Rock bottom has a way of clarifying things. You either drown or you learn how to swim with nothing but grit. For a week, I worked double shifts. Crashed at the shelter. Wore whatever donated clothes fit. Ben helped me start the process of getting a new ID by reaching out to the Vital Records office back in Indiana. With the first tips I made at Wanda's, I bought a cheap prepaid phone from Walmart. 7 days after they left me, that phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. I answered. My mom's voice, shaky. "Where are you? Are you okay? We've been looking everywhere." "Right. It was just a joke," she said. "We waited down the road for 20 minutes. We came back, but you were gone." "Sure." I let her keep talking, her words soaked in guilt light and fake concern. I could hear Dad in the background. Tell him to stop being dramatic and get his ass to the wedding already. Then Tyler's laugh, crystal clear. "You there, man? You crying or something? Chill out. It was funny." I felt nothing. Not anger. Not sadness. Just clarity. You wanted to see if I could make it on my own? I said, calm, steady. Then watch me. I hung up. Blocked the number. Then I blocked every family number I could remember. Next day, I walked into a Verizon store and changed my number completely. Before I did, I watched the missed calls roll in, 27 of them. I imagined their frustration, their anger that their personal punching bag wasn't hopping back into the ring. A month later, I had a studio apartment above a dry cleaner's. It was tiny and smelled like warm fabric softener all the time, but it was mine. I'd moved up to prep cook at Wanda's. Wanda taught me how to dice onions without losing a fingertip and showed me how to make her famous chili from scratch. She wasn't nice in the traditional sense, but she was fair. Honest. The kind of person who didn't ask about your past unless it was relevant to the task at hand. Sometimes, late at night, I'd log into my old email, the one my family still had. Messages piled up. From Mom, please come home. We're sorry. From Dad, this childish act needs to stop. Grow up. From Tyler, bro, it was a prank. You're being oured. I never responded. Not once. That's the thing about freedom. Once you've had a taste, even the idea of a cage feels unbearable. It wasn't always easy. Some nights I'd scroll through Instagram and see pictures of happy families smiling over turkey dinners or backyard BBQs, and it'd hit me like a punch to the chest. That ache you can't talk yourself out of. Some nights, the silence in my apartment felt so heavy I thought it might swallow me whole. Holidays were the worst. But every morning, I'd wake up in my own space, drink coffee from a chipped mug I bought at a thrift store, and walk to a job where no one called me useless. Brick by brick, I built something. Something real. 3 months after they dumped me, I checked that email one final time. New message from Mom. Your grandma's asking about you. Please let us know you're alive. I closed the tab, deleted the account, snapped my old SIM card in half, and tossed it into the alley dumpster behind Wanda's. That night, Wanda showed me how to make her apple pie crust. Said I had weirdly gentle hands for a guy who scrubs pants. It was the first real compliment I'd gotten in. Maybe ever. I never looked back. 5 years after that day at the Montana rest stop, I was scrolling Facebook on a burner account I used strictly for digital ghosting. I wasn't looking for them, not really, but there he was. Tyler. Popped up in a local news article someone had tagged him in. DUI. Wrapped his car around a telephone pole. Thankfully no one was hurt, except the pole. The article used his old high school football photo. He looked young, proud, untouchable. The mugshot underneath was a different story. Bloated. Lost. Like someone who'd been chasing glory and ran headfirst into reality. That's the thing about karma, it doesn't forget. Might take its sweet time, but it always finds its way home. By then, I had a life. Not glamorous, but real. I'd outgrown the studio and moved into a one-bedroom with actual windows. Wanda's had kept me on, and over time, I'd climbed from prep cook to assistant manager. Wanda still ran the kitchen like a drill sergeant with a heart condition, but somewhere along the way, she started treating me like I mattered. Like I was more than a pair of hands that didn't steal. My first major purchase? A decent laptop. Not top of the line, but good enough to take online classes at the community college. I started with basic business courses. Accounting. Management. Stuff my dad used to scoff at. That's for people who don't know how to work with their hands. Mornings were for Wanda's. Afternoons for class. Evenings, back on the line. Washington rinse. Repeat. I wasn't exactly healed. Not even close. Trust didn't come easy. It was more like a free trial that canceled itself the minute someone got too close. In 5 years, I'd made exactly 2 friends. One was Doug, my neighbor across the hall who played bass in a terrible garage band and brewed his own beer that tasted like someone tried to carbonate disappointment. The other? Wanda, if she counted. And then came Kendra. She started showing up at Wanda's twice a week, like clockwork. Always the same order. Denver omelet, no tomatoes, extra black coffee. Always sat at the counter with a textbook cracked open, zoning out so hard she'd forget her fork midair. One time, I timed her. 7 minutes and change before she realized her eggs had gone cold. For 4 months, I brought her refills, watched her read, wondered if she even noticed I existed. Then one Thursday, she looked up. Actually looked up. Her eyes flicked to my name tag, and she squinted. Is your name really Salvador? It wasn't. I'd just gotten tired of the usual and started making up names for fun. That became our thing. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I'd wear a different wrong name. She'd call me out. I'd act surprised. It was the dumbest flirting ever. It worked. Our first date wasn't supposed to be a date. Her study group bailed on dinner reservations at a pizza place with a months-long wait list. I was wiping down the counter when she got the text. 5 minutes later, I was sitting across from her at Antonio's, both of us pretending we hadn't just wandered into something big. 6 months later, she moved in. A year after that, we upgraded to a 2-bedroom. Nothing fancy, but the toilet didn't run all night, and our neighbors didn't treat 2 a.m. as base solo o'clock. I still checked in on my family now and then. Fake names. Incognito mode. Never interacted. Just watched. Dad's hardware store started going downhill after a Home Depot opened across town. He took to local Facebook groups to rant about it. Posts that were equal parts desperation and nostalgia. Mom's profile turned into a digital shrine of old photos. All throwbacks to the good years. Smiling kids. Matching outfits. She always tagged Tyler. Never me. Tyler bounced between jobs, vague posted about new ventures, talked about haters and second chances. It was clear their lives were circling the drain. And then Wanda sat me down during inventory one day. Said she was thinking of opening a second location. Asked if I wanted to run it. Not own, run. Important distinction. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't shake the feeling that it was a trap. That people like me didn't get chances like that. My dad made sure I believed that. Poison like that doesn't leave your system easy. But I said yes. Because Kendra, half asleep beside me, whispered, "You'd be crazy not to." Because Doug, through a cloud of weed smoke, shrugged and said, "Duh, you already run the place." Because Wanda wasn't my dad. 6 months later, Wanda's East opened its doors. It was smaller. Different menu. My menu. I worked 90-hour weeks. Lost 10 pounds I couldn't spare. Kendra and I fought about me never being home. I came home to more than one passive-aggressive sticky note on the fridge. But it worked. People came. People came back. The food was good. The vibe was better. For years after they left me in the dust, I was finally in a place where I could do more than just survive. I started helping Kendra with her med school loans. Not all of it. Those things are mountains, but enough to make a real dent. When I showed her the confirmation page for the payment, she burst into tears. Not the elegant movie kind. Real crying. Hiccups, runny mascara, the whole deal. And I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Solid. Like a real person. Not a ghost. Not someone holding on by a thread. Then my grandma died. I didn't hear it from my family. Found out the way you find out about celebrity gossip, through a Facebook post. My mom wrote a dramatic tribute, all emojis and tearful throwbacks. Grandma Rose had been the only one in the family who ever stood up to Frank. She slipped me 20s when no one was looking. Told me to save it for your escape. I used to think she meant college. Turns out, she meant exactly what I did. For a minute, I thought about going to the funeral. Looked up flights. Kendra said she'd come with me, hold my hand through the whole awkward mess. Doug offered to let me take his rust bucket of a hatchback. Wanda just shrugged and said, "Dead people don't care if you show up." She wasn't wrong. I didn't go. I sent flowers instead. Just a plain sympathy bouquet. Signed it with my first name. No return address. No message. Just Sal. The reaction online was instant. Mom posted something about divine signs and reaching across the veil. Tyler made some cryptic post about prodigal sons. Frank said nothing, but I could practically hear the yelling behind their walls. A week later, I got a friend request from a name I didn't recognize. No posts. No friends. At first, I almost deleted it, then I saw the message. "Sal, it's Uncle Ron. Your mom gave me your old email, but it bounced. Are you okay?" They're worried. Frank's been asking around. I blocked him. That night, I had my first panic attack in years. I ended up on the bathroom floor at 3 in the morning, trying to breathe while the walls closed in. Kendra found me like that. She didn't ask a single question. Just sat down beside me, shoulder to shoulder, and waited. When I could finally speak again, she said something simple. "They can't take anything from you that you don't give." The next morning, I called a lawyer. Got advice on restraining orders, just in case. Locked down all my privacy settings. Told Wanda to make sure staff never gave out personal info to anyone. Control what you can control. Exactly 5 years to the day since that rest stop, I married Kendra. We kept it simple. A state park, close friends. Doug was my best man. Wanda baked the cake and cried through the whole thing, mascara running into the frosting. Kendra's family adopted me like I was theirs from the start. Her dad told the kind of dad jokes that didn't make my skin crawl. Her mom hugged me without it feeling like a setup. That's the thing about found family. Sometimes it finds you when you've stopped looking. 1 week after the wedding, I was doom-scrolling my fake account in bed and came across a post from Frank. Community bulletin board. Looking for someone. Seeking information on my son, Sal. Last known location, Billings, Montana. Family emergency. There was no emergency. That much I knew. What I didn't know was why, after all this time, they were trying to find me again. So I made a new fake profile. Joined every hometown group I could think of. I pieced it together. The hardware store? Closed. The house I grew up in? Foreclosed. Mom had some kind of surgery she was being cryptic about online. Tyler? Back living at home after DUI number 3. They weren't looking for me out of love. They needed something. And for the first time in years, I smiled when I thought about them. Not because I was happy they were struggling, but but because I didn't care anymore. I shut the laptop, climbed into bed next to my wife, and made a choice. I'd keep watching from a distance, not out of hate, not out of love, but because sometimes the best revenge isn't what you do. It's what you build while they're falling apart. It started with a LinkedIn notification. 15 years after they ditched me in Montana, life had finally settled into something resembling peace, and then, a glitch. Someone had viewed my profile 27 times in one day. Recruiters do that sometimes, so at first I brushed it off. But then I saw the name. Tyler Matthews. My brother. That's the thing about the past, it's patient. It'll lie in the tall grass for years, waiting for the right moment to strike. By then, my world looked nothing like that scrawny kid living above the dry cleaner. Kendra had finished med school, survived residency, and was working part-time at a community clinic so she could be home with our kids more. We had two now, Ellie, 7, and Marcus, 4. Our old shoebox of an apartment had been traded for a modest 4-bedroom on the edge of town with a backyard where the kids could dig for worms and I could attempt, and fail, to grow tomatoes. Wanda's had grown too. 3 locations now. Not some flashy franchise, just steady and real. I didn't have to work the line anymore unless someone called out. Wanda had semi-retired, but she still popped in unannounced to complain about our pie crust technique. I thought I'd made peace with everything. Really thought I was done looking over my shoulder. But seeing Tyler's name on my screen sent me spiraling. I told Kendra while we were folding laundry, our usual Sunday ritual while Netflix played in the background. She paused mid-sock and asked, "Are you okay?" I nodded. What else could I say? That I felt like I was 22 again, standing in a parking lot, abandoned? That I could hear my dad's voice in my head, like a ghost with a megaphone? 3 days later, I was helping inventory at Wanda's East. Our supplier had messed up the coffee filter order again, and I was elbow-deep in boxes when Maya, one of our servers, popped her head in. "There's some family out front asking for you." First thought? Kendra's parents. They'd been known to drop in unannounced. I walked to the front, running through excuses in my head about why they should stay for dinner. But it wasn't Kendra's parents. It was Frank. Older. Grayer. Shriveled in a way that made me do a double take. Susan, my mom, was there too, I sunken. Dyed brown hair too perfect for her face. Tyler was with them, and he looked exactly like our dad did at 40. Same puffed-up stance, same way of owning space that didn't belong to him. And next to Tyler was a young woman I didn't recognize. Early 20s. Kept her distance like she didn't quite belong. Nobody said a word. The clatter and hum of lunch rush faded until all I could hear was my own heartbeat. Frank spoke first, said my name like it was a question. I nodded. My throat was frozen shut. I'd pictured this moment 100 different ways. Sometimes I told them off. Sometimes I was cool and aloof, untouchable. A few times, in my weaker late-night thoughts, we even reconciled. But reality is messier than any fantasy. I pointed to an empty table in the corner. Told Maya to bring water. Sat down and waited. Turns out, they'd found me through a small feature in a regional magazine, Rocky Mountain Rising. A spotlight on 10 local success stories. My photo in front of Wanda's was barely more than a sidebar. But one of Mom's old high school friends saw it, recognized me, and sent it to her with a "Is this your son?" message. That's how they found me. They told me they'd called my old number 107 times over the years. Susan actually said it like I should be impressed. Frank and Susan talked over each other, how they'd worried, how everything that happened was just a misunderstanding. Tyler chimed in like we were old buddies, not the guy who helped abandon me. The woman? Turned out to be Tyler's second wife, Poppy. She just watched quietly, eyes darting around like she was collecting data. I let them talk. Let them spin their fantasy version where they were the good guys. Where I just overreacted. Meanwhile, I watched them carefully. Frank kept eyeing the restaurant, his brain visibly doing the math. Susan's hand trembled when she reached for her water. Tyler's fake charm kept slipping when he thought I wasn't looking. When the room finally quieted down, I asked the only question that mattered. Why now? The real story came out in pieces. Frank had heart issues. No insurance. Hospital bills piling up. Their second house was in foreclosure. Tyler's crypto venture had exploded in all the worst ways. Susan needed surgery. No money. No plan. They weren't there to reconnect. They were there for a check. I should have been angry. But what I felt surprised me pity. These people who once towered over me, who shaped every corner of my world with fear and cruelty, they looked small. Desperate. Lost. So I invited them to dinner. At my house. Told them I needed to talk to Kendra first. They lit up like it was already settled. That afternoon felt like I was walking through a dream. I picked Ellie up from her dance class, helped Marcus practice his show and tell speech about rocks he found in the yard, all while texting Kendra updates like, "Don't panic. My family's coming to dinner." She offered to take the kids to her sister's place. I said no. I wanted them there. I wanted my family to meet my real family. Dinner was chicken enchiladas. Nothing special, just a recipe I doctored up from the back of an old El Paso box, but it had become mine. Ellie set the table without being asked, placing forks on the wrong side like a tiny rebel. Kendra quietly corrected her, smiling. Marcus refused to take off his Spider-Man costume because, apparently, Tuesdays were now Spider-Man days. When the doorbell rang, I nearly dropped the tray I was carrying. Kendra walked by and gave my arm a squeeze. Whatever happens, she whispered, I've got you. The kids looked up from the living room like they could feel the weight of the moment. And it was heavy. Introductions were awkward. Frank kept calling Kendra Karen, even after being corrected twice. Susan cried every time she looked at the kids, which only succeeded in making Marcus deeply uncomfortable. Tyler and Poppy were the least exhausting, doing their best to fake polite small talk. Still, Tyler kept dropping phrases like family supports family, and we all fall on hard times, like breadcrumbs toward the ask. After dinner, Kendra took the kids upstairs for bath time and bedtime stories. As she left, she gave me a look that clearly meant, text me if you need an emergency exit. Then it was just me and them in the living room. Frank launched into his pitch. How he'd always believed in me. How proud he was of everything I'd accomplished. How they were just going through a rough patch and needed a little help. 20 grand. He called it. Just a loan. I let him finish. Then I asked him if he remembered what he said to me on my 18th birthday. He didn't. So I reminded him, at least I won't have to deal with your nonsense anymore once you're legally not my problem. I turned to Susan. Asked if she remembered what she did when Frank tore up my community college acceptance letter and threw it in the trash. She said nothing. Just blinked. I asked Tyler if he remembered telling my first girlfriend that I was probably gay anyway when she came by looking for me. He looked everywhere but at me. They squirmed. Tried to spin. Frank started to get that edge in his voice, the one that used to shut me down when I was a kid. But here's the thing. I wasn't that kid anymore. I stood up, walked to the office, and came back with an envelope. Handed it to Frank. He opened it, frowned. $73? $73.50, I corrected. That's what a Greyhound ticket from Billings to home cost in 2010. That's what it would have taken to get back after you left me. The silence that followed was the loudest I'd ever heard. Frank's face turned red. You ungrateful little, and the whole playlist of childhood trauma came rushing back out of his mouth like he'd been waiting years to hit play. I didn't yell. Didn't argue. Just stood and said, you need to leave. Susan tried tears again. Said, how could you do this to your family? Tyler dropped the act. Cold. Condescending. Muttered something about how people never change. Poppy didn't say anything. Just looked deeply embarrassed. Frank crumpled the check and tossed it on the porch as they left. I closed the door behind them, locked it, and leaned against the wood like it was the only thing holding me up. Kendra came downstairs, asking if I was okay. I nodded. Couldn't speak yet. We cleaned up in silence. Checked on the kids. Brushed our teeth like it was any other Tuesday. Later, as I was arming the security system, I checked the porch camera feed. They were still in the driveway, arguing. Frank was flailing his arms. Susan was crying again. Tyler was glaring at the house with a look I knew too well, somewhere between envy and rage. Eventually, they drove off. I haven't heard from them since. And I don't expect to. That chapter is closed. That's the thing about revenge. It's not always a dramatic scene or a well-timed comeback. Sometimes, the best kind is just living well. Every giggle from Ellie. Every sleepy Sunday morning tangled in sheets with Kendra. Every ordinary, quiet, beautiful moment that they don't get to have. No, I never went back home. I built something better. Then, one day, I got a LinkedIn notification that flipped my stomach. Alan Matthews had viewed my profile again. 15 years. After all this time. 27 views in one day. I don't know what spooked me more, how many times he clicked, or the fact that he still cared enough to look. By then, life had stretched into something full and peaceful. Kendra worked part-time at the clinic. The kids had their routines. Ellie was into gymnastics. Marcus had a dinosaur obsession. Wanda's had grown into 3 locations, still small, still local, but solid. I'd finally stepped back from the day-to-day. Only showed up when someone called out or if I was itching to make pie crust from scratch just to prove I could still do it the way Wanda taught me. I still checked in on the old crew once in a while, just to know. Frank and Susan had downsized after losing the house. Tyler had been married, divorced, and married again. All of them seemed to move on, at least on the surface. Until this. I told Kendra about the LinkedIn thing while we were folding laundry on a quiet Sunday night. She paused mid-fold, mismatched socks in her hands. Do you want to block him? She asked. I shrugged. But deep down, I knew something was coming. It arrived 3 days later. I was at Wanda's East, our second location, helping with a surprise inspection because our supplier had once again delivered the wrong damn filters. Maya popped her head into the back. There's family here asking for you. Again, my first thought was Kendra's folks. But no, it was them. Frank looked like a man worn out by time. His shoulders, once squared with bluster, slouched like someone who'd finally accepted gravity. Susan looked older, her smile cracked from years of pretending. Tyler was wearing a cheap blazer that didn't fit right, and standing next to him, Poppy again. Still quiet, still wide-eyed. They'd found me because of a magazine. A fluff piece titled Rocky Mountain Rising had profiled 10 local entrepreneurs. My photo outside Wanda's had been a 1-inch sidebar. That's all it took. Susan started crying immediately. "We tried so hard to find you," she said. "I kept count, 107 calls. You never answered." Frank told me he was proud. That he'd always known I'd do well. That what happened back then wasn't how I remembered it. Tyler made himself comfortable, cracking jokes like we were catching up at a class reunion. Poppy stayed silent, watching. And then, of course, the truth emerged. Frank needed money. Big medical bills. No insurance. The second house gone. Susan needed knee surgery. Tyler's crypto company had imploded. They weren't here because they missed me. They were here because they needed something. And honestly, I didn't even feel anger anymore. Just nothing. I invited them to dinner. Told them I needed time to think. To talk to Kendra. They accepted like it was a done deal. That night, we ate in my kitchen. Ellie wore her apron and helped me sprinkle cheese. Marcus demanded everyone call him Spider-Man. Kendra's eyes never left mine. She knew exactly what was going on without me saying a word. After dinner, once the kids were tucked in, I finally said what I'd been holding in. I asked Frank if he remembered telling me I was a disappointment on my birthday. I asked Susan if she remembered doing nothing when he trashed my college acceptance. I asked Tyler if he remembered the horrible things he said to my girlfriend all those years ago. They flailed. They denied. They minimized. But I was done shrinking for them. I handed Frank a check. $73.50. The exact cost of a Greyhound ticket back home in 2010. "That's what it would have cost to fix your joke," I said. "That's what you decided I wasn't worth." Frank exploded. Susan cried. Tyler's mask slipped into something colder. Poppy just stared at her shoes. They left, eventually. Frank threw the check on my porch. I locked the door. Watched them argue in the driveway. Watched them disappear for the last time. And that was it. I never saw them again.